Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Amanda Ziadeh with WashingtonExec, and today I'm joined by a member of industry and government to discuss the role of AI in security in the Department of Homeland Security. Our panelists today are Matthew Ferraro with DHS. Matthew is Senior Counselor for Cybersecurity and Emerging Tech to the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Executive Director of the AI Safety and Security Board. And we've got Gary Barber, Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for the Department of Homeland Security at LMI. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
So before we jump into our discussion today, I wanted to ask if you could both briefly describe to our viewers your priorities in your respective positions and what you're heavily focused on at the moment. Matthew, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Gary. Wonderful to be with you guys today. So, as Amanda said, I am the Senior Counselor for Cybersecurity and Emerging Technology to the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Executive Director of the Artificial Intelligence Safety and Security Board. Pretty long titles. What does that boil down to? I advise the Secretary on the development and the deployment of AI and other advanced technologies, quantum and connected communities, to fulfill the department's missions across our many mission states, and on AI policymaking and emerging technology policymaking and cybersecurity across the department and with our interagency colleagues. So what are our priorities? Well, particularly when it comes to AI, our priorities really fall into two buckets. The first is the use of AI for our missions, to support our missions. We're a big agency. For those of you who don't know, we've like 280,000 employees. We're the third largest behind the Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration. We have 22 components and sub-agencies, and they run everywhere from the Secret Service and the Coast Guard to FEMA, to CBP and ICE and USCIS, all the Border Patrol agencies, to TSA. And so there are lots of different missions that we have and lots of different people that we touch. In fact, we say that more Americans interact with DHS every day than with any other department. So the opportunity to use AI to improve the delivery of services and to protect the American people is very high. And that's something that we're very much focused on. Second, we guard against AI-enabled malicious use against our various missions. And I think we'll talk more about this as we go, but I'll just tick off a couple of them. And this is in our Homeland Threat Assessment, but we found that bad actors are testing AI capabilities to develop malware and target critical infrastructure, which are the sort of the 16 sectors that run our economy and our society. We found that adversary nations are developing AI technologies that could undermine U.S. cyber defenses, for example, by detecting vulnerabilities automatically. And we've also found that AI substantially lowers the barriers to entry that could barriers to entry that allow for the design and synthesis of chemical, biological, radiological weapons. So obviously that's a very serious concern of ours. DHS is, of course, a counterterror agency. So yeah, that's a little bit what's on our plate.
All right, awesome. Thanks for sharing. And Gary, a bit about your role.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Amanda and Matthew. Just again, my role is the Vice President and CTO of LMI's Homeland Security market. Honestly, as I walk through this and our priorities, it seems like Matthew and I just sat together. We talked about these issues, but everything he hit on is what I'm just getting ready to describe. It's what we do here at LMI, right? I lead this strategic integration of advanced technologies to enhance the operational readiness, the resilience and mission of Homeland Security, as well as the Department of Justice. Our Homeland Security market is also inclusive of DOJ. LMI has this rich history of solving complex logistics challenges since the Kennedy administration, which is around 1961. My role focuses on driving innovation, transformation, and basically, addressing evolving needs of federal agencies to ensure they're equipped to meet today's security challenges. And we just discussed the priorities. This is where it's just very interesting, where Matthew and I are very aligned. Our top priorities right now are leveraging advanced technologies to provide strategic expertise and strengths for our national security, but also focusing on how generative AI, enhances that decision-making and operational efficiency across various DHS components. Things like cybersecurity, supply chain, acquisition, risk management. These are areas that, AI can really benefit. Our team also has a lot of capabilities in the chemical, the biological, the radiological, nuclear domains, ensuring that teams are equipped with cutting-edge tools, especially training, interagency training, medical operations. The big thing for us is our strategy is really deeply rooted around program management excellence, acquisition precision, and seamless information coordination. All these together help fortify, our Homeland Security efforts. So it's definitely a pleasure to talk with y'all about the next couple questions that are coming up and being with y'all today.
Thank you both so much for giving us a glimpse into your roles and priorities. So let's dive deeper into AI and its role in securing DHS and furthering the department's mission. Matthew, what AI programs, pilots, policies has DHS invested in, and how do they help move the department forward?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, we're very proud of what we've done. We think we're really at the forefront of using AI against our missions. And I'm happy to tick through a couple of, for examples. So, for example, Customs and Border Protection uses a machine learning model to identify potentially suspicious patterns in a vehicle crossing history at the border. So we declassified this example a couple months ago. CBP used this model to flag a car for secondary screening, which yielded the discovery of over 75 kilograms of drugs hidden in the automobile. This was at the San Ysidro port of entry. And again, I think I actually like that example a lot for a couple of reasons to just riff for a moment. One is it's machine learning. So it's not generative. Generative is great, and we'll go into some other examples where we use generative AI, but we don't need that for some of our key missions to make a real impact. The second is that it doesn't make any decision by itself, right? It just gives a piece of information to a border patrol agent who then decides whether or not to pull a car into secondary. So again, you don't have this sort of overlord scenario where the AI is running the world. It's just helping enable human decision making. And then the third, I would just say we know how it's working. So that's one example. I'll give you one from Homeland Security Investigations. And for those who don't know, HSI is a part of our law enforcement. It's one of our major federal law enforcement agencies. It has about 12,000 agents and dozens of offices, both domestically and overseas. One of their main missions is countering what we call crimes of exploitation. And so in August of 2023, so I guess a year ago now, they announced that they were able to identify 311 previously unknown victims of sexual exploitation, thanks in part to a machine learning model that enhanced older images of the victims, sort of age progressed them, to provide investigators with new leads. And the technology helped agents turn formerly cold cases into rescues of several victims, and were able to arrest several suspected perpetrators. So a real positive impact. I can take through a couple others. FEMA uses AI to assess more efficiently damage to homes, buildings, and other property after a disaster, because what they can do is they can look at sort of before photos and then after photos, and then the AI can help to predict which imagery, which installations rather were more severely damaged, so that they can more appropriately target their resources in the hours and days after a disaster. Another pilot that we recently launched is with HSI, and this does use generative AI, and they've created a large language model that helps with semantic search. So they have tens of thousands of police reports, HSI does, and they haven't been able to develop semantic search or sort of inferential search. And so to give you an example, if Gary said that he had spotted a late model, light colored pickup truck that was suspicious, and I wrote that I had also spotted a 2017 white Toyota Tacoma, the LLM will surface that inference and will direct me to Gary's report and vice versa. And that's the kind of thing that just makes investigations a lot easier and a lot better. Let me hit on a couple others. USCIS, we have asylum officers. They interview applicants for asylum, and we've created a chatbot that allows our asylum officers to get some training reps in, because the chatbot will impersonate an asylum seeker. And they've programmed it so that it gives information about this asylum seeker's case, but also in a way that they think is consistent with the way a typical asylum seeker might present that information, which is to say slowly. You have to sort of work with the person to draw the information out. And this is just a good way to help train our folks before they're going and dealing with actual asylum seekers. And the final one I'll just mention is also a generative AI model back in FEMA. And there's these things called hazard mitigation plans, and their localities create them. And the hazard mitigation plans, help the localities figure out how they're going to mitigate hazards, as the name suggests. But also they're necessary to be eligible for various federal funding. And it just so happens that more disadvantaged communities, poor communities, don't have the means to write hazard mitigation plans. And so that's a double knock, right? One, they don't have the plan, which could be useful, and B, they're unable to access federal funds. Where they're developing a generative AI model that's going to help these less resourced communities write the plans. So that's going to solve two problems. One, it's going to help write a plan that might be useful, and B, it will give them access to federal funds. And I think if I could draw some general principles from all these examples, it's looking where the felt need is greatest, where the technology could be the most successful. And also, we're not like looking for the coolest, we're not pushing the envelope per se on the technology. We're using the technology that is developing in pretty much, mainline uses, but it's just doing so in a way, deploying them in a way that they can make a real positive impact against our missions.
Yeah, those are incredible use cases. It seems like it's not only helping make jobs easier, but also filling some gaps technology can be.
Yes, that's right. That's the hope.
Awesome. So we know that AI isn't only being used in this positive, impactful way, but also by bad actors and kind of helping to advance the sophistication of cyber threats. So how does DHS respond to those increasing threats?
Well, yeah, let's talk a second about the various threats. So, bad actors without sophisticated programming skills can use chatbots to create malware. The chatbots can increasingly impersonate conversational English, so that increases the risks of social engineering and phishing schemes. Deepfakes and synthetic media can impersonate individuals, and that can, of course, lead to social engineering frauds or cyber intrusions. You get on the Zoom link and you think it's your tech support, but it actually is a bad actor, and he asks for your username and password, and you hand it over, and then the bad guys have access to your system and are lacing it with malware. So there's, as you can imagine, lots of different vulnerabilities. So let me just tick through a few things that our cybersecurity infrastructure security agency is doing. And I would just, for those who are interested, they have a wonderful AI roadmap on their website that I would point you to. But let me just give you a couple quick highlights. One, they're assessing and assisting secure by design AI-based software adoption across a diverse array of stakeholders, including the federal civilian government agencies, private sector companies, and state, local, tribal, and territorial governments through the development of best practices and guidance for the secure and resilient development of AI software. And what does that all boil down to? There's just a way of building software that we call secure by design. And that's basically just building it with security in mind. So it's less hackable, less hijackable. And that is very important in all contexts, but particularly in the AI context against AI-enabled threats. The second is that CISA assesses and recommends mitigations of AI threats facing our nation's critical infrastructure in partnership with other government agencies and industry partners, and they develop and test and evaluate AI tools. And I would just pause there and say, again, critical infrastructure is this term of art referring to all these different sectors, financial sector, dams, chemical facilities, all the rest of it, that we determine are key to U.S. national economic security. And CISA works with these sectors to develop, test, and evaluate AI tools and to ensure that they're going to be safe and to mitigate threats that are targeting specifically critical infrastructure. And then the third thing I would just mention in broad stroke is that both CISA and DHS headquarters contribute to this interagency process to develop approaches for the U.S. government's overall strategy on AI. And this has been a major focus of ours for a long time, but in particular since President Biden signed an executive order on AI in October of 2023, which really kicked interagency policymaking into high gear.
And Gary, before we jump into LMI and its use of generative AI, anything you'd like to add to that discussion on addressing or combating the use of AI in terms of cyber threats?
Yeah, I think Matthew actually covered a lot of different threat areas, but just to add a couple more, right now you've also got instances of AI-driven malware. These can adapt and evolve in real time, right? This is how sophisticated they are currently right now. Basically, our traditional defenses and detection and neutralization of these threats are being exasperated. We just need more technology to understand when those threats are occurring. That's the challenge that we have right now. This leads to larger scale attacks. There's critical infrastructure issues that we need to deal with at a moment's notice. We've seen everything from what happened recently with CrowdStrike and other things that are coming up. We need to start patching our systems quicker so vulnerabilities are not there, and we can go ahead and plug these holes. Basically from LMI's perspective, supporting DHS involves a few things. We need to be able to predict, detect, and counter these advanced threats very quickly in real time. 2 o'clock in the morning, you have an issue, you need to be able to get on it and need to be able to patch that system. You need to be able to counter a particular threat and move forward. And this is where we think we excel here in our company. By integrating these tools and DHS operations, it really is going to help our cybersecurity defenses. Matthew talked about that implementing policies and procedures that could really be brought down. So our infrastructure and our community around cyber is really, really impactful. So those are the areas I think LMI really, really responds well to. So, yeah.
So thanks for that. And kind of jumping into generative AI, I know that LMI is focused on that as well. What Gen AI research and programs is LMI investing in, and how is generative AI leveraged when addressing, the changing DHS related policies and mandates?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And just like everybody else, everybody's really on the Gen AI bandwagon right now. And so there's a lot of applicable use cases for it. Particularly we have a solution called our Liger platform, which is an engineered to enhance government acquisition processes, basically exceptional efficiency and accuracy. Matthew, I talked a second ago about policies, procedures, also about how the acquisition process can be leveraged using generative AI. And so Liger is more than just that for us. It's more than a large language model. It's a comprehensive toolkit that's designed to secure government-focused application. The beauty of what we have designed is that we don't go outside like ChatGPT or other devices that can connect to the internet. They usually provide solution nations. We provide it internally. It's secure. It's containerized so that you can run it on your own cloud service providers, your Googles, your AWSs, your Azures, and so forth. So this significantly reduces the risk of you providing actionable intelligence to the people who need to make decisions quicker by using your information and not something that could be hallucinated based upon its thought processes and the model itself. But these are big. So when it comes to addressing other DHS policy-related mandates, our Liger is tailor-driven. It can swiftly analyze and adapt to new and evolving policies. Again, we talked about the security of ingesting sensitive data. It is your data. I can share this data with other components of DHS, or I can just keep it to myself. There's RBAC involved. There's a lot of security that's there to make sure that you as an individual know that your information is not being disseminated outside of your network or outside of your environment. So I think this is an indispensable tool for navigating complexity of government acquisitions and policies. We talk about CISA, policy updates all the time. How can you go through that quickly and effectively understand where deltas are and being able to provide those new information down to a component that actually needs to implement this particular procedure, this particular approach. And this is where we feel our Gen AI approach can really handle those needs of government.
Well, Gary, how else can AI be leveraged to address other security concerns that you're focused on, like supply chain security?
Oh yeah, now this is a great question, right? And so right now, people in the past were talking about, let me go ahead and secure the box. But now we're at the component level. What goes in that particular system? Are we looking at motherboards, BIOSes? Are we looking at things that make up the device? IoT devices at the border. Matthew just talked about the use case there. As you're crossing the border, you have multiple IoT devices that are there scanning, license plate, WIDI cards, and so forth. What makes up those particular devices? And what are the vulnerabilities between the vendors who are actually providing those devices for us as consumers of that product in the government space? So really supply chain risk management is really big for us, understanding when vendors have vulnerabilities that need to be propagated up very quickly so we can pivot in a different direction, provide a vendor who may have a more secure device, have a more secure component that we can now inject into our overall solution to ensure that our nation is secure. So definitely around supply chain, real-time data analytics, predictive analytics is something that our tool Liger can actually help with. And we've actually using this in multiple agencies currently.
So thanks for sharing about that. I know there's so much more that we can talk about in terms of how these advanced technologies are helping to secure on these components. And I know DHS is a massive organization, but Matthew, looking ahead, how is the department currently positioned cybersecurity wise? And What is it doing to implement cyber performance goals across industry?
Sure. So let me take the question in two parts. The first is, I think that we've really made this a priority, and there's large bureaucracies are a lot like battleships. They take a long time to turn, particularly an organization like ours. The secretary calls us the Department of Partnerships, because so much of what we do is in partnership, not only with state, local, tribal, territorial, and other federal partners, but even like within ourselves, because we're a big agency. We have lots of different pieces. We all have different parts of a big mission. So I think the first thing is having that sort of executive leadership and guidance that comes from the secretary. The second is we're doing a lot in terms of bringing on people. So you might say the first is priority. The second is people. And I would just flag that we have something we're very proud of called the AI Core. And here we're hiring in a hiring sprint to hire 50 AI experts, from very top jobs in industry, others from government or people with government and industry background, into the department, into the permanent cadre of experts on AI that we then dole out to different components in different offices to assist with discrete tasks. And I think that this has been phenomenally successful. We launched in February. We've onboarded our first people a couple months later, but a few months later, which for those who know is like lightning speed for government. And we're adding more as we go. I have to say, I think it's a great model for other kinds of surge capacities for the department and for others. So second is people, and the third I do think is a bit of policy, which is just making sure our policies are aligned internally and with the agency. Well, I might add a fourth, since I'm feeling alliterative. That's pilots, and I think I went through them earlier in our talk. But I think making sure that we pilot these products sooner rather than later, use cases sooner rather than later, because A, that helps solve mission, and B, it's information gathering. We can figure out what's working and what isn't. And then I'll just say briefly about cyber performance goals. So typically those are a common set of protections that we push out to industry. We want all critical infrastructure entities to use CPGs. And I'll just say you could check them out on the CISO website. But basically, it's if you're listening to this and you're a small entity and you're worried about cybersecurity, particularly in the AI space, head on over to our website, read our CPGs, because you'll find some performance guidance that are sort of fit for service for an entity of your size. So there's my plug.
So, well, as we've been sharing and discussing and gathering, the securing the nation and the department really is a collaborative partner approach. And even as working environments continue to include remote and hybrid options, which is what we're largely seeing these days, how can government and industry work together to ensure those environments remain secure and that the people you're speaking with virtually is who they say they are? Gary and I were just talking about this earlier. Deep fakes and AI is getting so sophisticated. You could be speaking to an avatar. And how can emerging tech help here as well? Gary, we'll start with
you. Exactly right. So as we were discussing, our deep fakes, liveliness detection, right, is what we need to really get to. Understanding is that Gary's speaking to you right now, Amanda and Matthew, or is it not? Those are big areas of concern right now. I was just on a conference call not too long ago, and the person that was on there wasn't on camera, but he had unverified. How do I know that individual's who they say they are? That is something we need to get to, especially as they work from home, depending on level of clearance in this particular environment. You got to be able to trust the individual is really security conscious, and there's no other way for information to be disseminated that could end up adversely affecting the mission of Homeland. There's other things. Definitely the continued implementation of zero trust architecture is always there. That's very good. And the encryption of all secure devices. Things that I think we need to move towards is really more around geofencing, geo-based, security, AVAC type stuff. Am I in my office at my house talking to you right now, or am I over in some other country talking to you? And well, you should be cut off because you should be at home or in just a particular location that you're approved to work. So DHS can actually understand maybe the probability of Gary being Gary is a little bit higher. Those type of things I think are really important as we move forward. But really integrating these type of technology and collaboration with DHS allows us to be more effective, working from home or in the office, where most people, I'll be honest, don't want to go back to the office. Matthew made they may say something about that in a second, but for me, I like working from home. I'm more effective, I think, working from home. I save more time, but yet I can actually perform the mission needs. And so this is where I think industry, working with people like Matthew, can maybe think outside the box, provide creative solutions that really drives the efficiency and effectiveness of people who are working to support that mission for DHS.
And Matthew, your final thoughts.
Well, first thing I say is that I like working from home. I also like working in the office. So I guess hybrid is perfect for me. I'm going to deploy one of my charming homespun aphorisms. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And by that, I mean cyber awareness and cyber hygiene is just the most important piece of all of this. And that's true whether we're talking about low-fi risk or high-fi AI-enabled risk. So, you don't use the same password for everything. Don't write it down. Use a difficult password. Use multi-factor authentication. Be wary. Anyone wanting to get money from you quickly because it's an emergency, that should set off your spidey senses. Anyone who calls you and starts asking for you to buy gift cards for them, be suspicious. And then sometimes there can be a very low-tech solution, like having a passcode, right? Just if you deal with your trusted persons, your family, just have a word that they're going to know. And if they call you and you can say, I understand you're in dire straits right now. What's the passcode? And you might find out quickly that they're not who they say they are. And indeed, there was an example of a corporation. I won't name them, but it was named in the press, where somebody was impersonating a trusted person, and they said the potential victim said, "We were just speaking the other day. What was the name of that book you mentioned that I should read?" And then the perpetrator hung up. And so, like doing that sort of stuff, it's you don't have to be Columbo to be on the lookout for cyber dangers now or in the future.
Those are really good tips, actually. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
Not seem that obvious to some. But anyways, thank you both so much for joining me today. I know there's so much more we could talk about in terms of the use of emerging tech in cyber threats and in securing DHS and its systems and its components. So thank you for sharing what you can, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you.